We are now live streaming.
Fantastic. Good afternoon, Kenji.
Hey, I just sent you a message. I was able to actually my meeting canceled, so I was able to I'll be able to join for part of this, which is awesome.
Perfect.
Yep.
Perfect. We should get into the draft rules fairly quickly. So
Okay,
we have
cool.
one other person from ODFW is also going to pop off a little early. So we'll get right into it.
Perfect. Thanks.
Yeah. Hey, Don. Good morning or afternoon, I should say, Justin.
Hey, Robert.
How's things going over there?
Not too bad. It's warm and rainy. No snow yet.
Nice.
Yeah. I forget where you're located, Robert.
I'm outside of Salem, just north
Okay,
of Salem.
cool.
So
Yeah. Nice and wet and rainy
yeah,
over there, I imagine.
also wet and rainy. Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right on.
Hey there, Joe.
Hey, how's it going?
Doing pretty good. Doing
Good.
pretty good. We'll give it a few minutes here. Still a few people coming online, and we'll get going here. Hey, Adam, good to see you.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for popping on. Alrighty, I think that's mostly everyone. We'll go ahead and jump into it. So thank you all for being here. This meeting is being recorded. It's also being live streamed to our OPRD Directors YouTube channel. Today we're going to be jumping into the second RAC meeting for our drone regulations in Oregon State Parks. So we'll be having a little bit of discussion. I'm sure most of you saw the um, agenda that I sent out. And hopefully you've seen the draft rules. We'll have those pulled up on screen today and go through them. If you've been a part of a RAC before, maybe a little bit different than maybe what you've experienced before, I'm going to be taking notes and such throughout the day, but I'm going to try my best not to be editing the rules and such as we're going through it. I'll just be taking notes on the advisories. That way you guys don't all get uh, vertigo or anything with me scrolling back and forth through the rules or trying to edit and change stuff as we're going along. So we'll go ahead and get started with introductions. There's some new people who were not here as part of the first RAC, but are joining us today just to give us some greater perspectives, broader perspectives, and be able to advance the conversation more. So I'll go ahead and get started, and then if you want to come off mute and introduce yourself as we get to you on this list, that would be perfect. So my name again is Robert Ellison. I am a policy advisor with Oregon Parks and Recreation Department. I have been with OPRD for going on 7 years now, and I spent the majority part of my career as a park ranger kind of across the state, but now filling this role. Go ahead, Katie.
Katie Gauthier, PRD Government Relations and Interim Communications Manager, and I'm here to help with background and to support Robert.
Brady, go ahead.
Hey, good afternoon. I'm Brady Callahan. I'm the OPRD Geospatial Team Lead and the internal SUAS coordinator. And my role here is to just assist with this process as it pertains to drone use within the department. Thanks.
Thank you, Brady. Laurel, go ahead. I don't see Laurel on the call. Katie, if you could shoot her a quick message, that would be awesome, and we'll just keep going forward for now. Justin, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, Justin Paulson, OPRD Park Manager, specifically in the Blue Mountains in Eastern Oregon at Immigrant Springs State Park, and have been with the agency for 11 years.
Thank you. Lynn? If you're talking, Lynn, we can't hear you. Okay, we'll give that one a few minutes as well. We'll jump ahead. Go ahead, Joe.
Hey everybody, I'm Joe Liebesite. I'm the statewide conservation director for Bird Alliance of Oregon, also on the Oregon Ocean Policy Advisory Council, representing statewide conservation, and yeah, happy to be here.
Perfect. Kim McCarroll, go ahead.
Hi there, I'm Kim McCarroll. I'm with Oregon Equestrian Trails.
Thanks for being here. Dawn?
Hey everybody, I'm Dawn Harris. I'm with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I serve as their Visitor Services Manager for 6 national wildlife refuges on the Oregon coast. And I've been with the agency for 25 years.
Thank you. Brian?
Brian Richardson, the commercial drone service provider. Been flying drones for about 12 years, commercially now for about 3. And I'm on the road, so I apologize for any road noise in the background.
No worries, you're coming through good. We'll go ahead to Kaya. I don't see her on here yet. So we'll keep going. Adam?
Hi, my name's Adam Walsh. I just got added. It's nice to see all of you. My background is as a amateur remote control airplane enthusiast. I like to fly the planes, which are technically drones because they are unmanned. And my more like white collar background has been in the realm of political campaigns and working as a staffer at the state legislature for many sessions. I don't do that anymore, but that's the pathway that helped me get here to the RAC for this meeting is a background working for representatives and helping the bills and the rules get passed into laws. So it caught my interest just being aware as I am and just curious about, I guess, what's going on in general for the rules, and also that, it seems to me, and granted, I wasn't at the first meeting, but uh, some of the focus of this group might not be all about my own concerns, and so I'm sympathetic to that. It sounds like it's maybe more the commercial side and scientifically speaking. I suppose the perspective I bring is, can the rules work? Does it, what's it going to look like in reality? And then also, as a member of my local RC Airplane Club, uh, inside of controlled airspace, what does it look like when state parks is looking to adopt rules um, that, sometimes there's the unintended consequences. And so that's just where I'm coming from.
Awesome.
Thanks,
Thank you
thanks
for
for having
being
me.
here, and thanks for jumping on last minute. Michael?
Hey everybody, Michael Sherman, filmmaker, photographer. I am operating out of Springfield, Eugene area, and grew up the Mackenzie River, so pretty local. And I have been doing videography work for the past 15 years and operating my own business for the past 7 or so. Use drones a lot and have worked with lots of different nonprofits and different organizations, conservation groups doing storytelling, filmmaking along the Oregon coast and throughout Oregon, Washington, California. And yeah, excited to be here, share some insight. Had to work through some different permitting through drones, through different government agencies, and definitely wildlife and conservation minded and wanting to try to do filmmaking and storytelling to benefit the outdoors. And drones are a big part of that. So trying to be able to use these tools in these certain areas are definitely helpful for the work I do. And yeah, happy to be here and provide some input.
Yeah, thanks for jumping in. Emily?
Hi, thanks for having me. Emily Van Wyk. I am the Wildlife Diversity Program Coordinator for Oregon's Department of Fish and Wildlife.
Great, thank you. We'll go back. It looks like Kaya, you're on now, so if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, sorry, I was having issues with the Zoom link. My name's Kaya Hazard. I'm the Oregon Regional Manager for Surfrider Foundation. I live up in the Northern Coast Range, but work statewide with our volunteer-led chapters in Oregon. So Surfrider is a recreation-focused nonprofit, but we do have a lot of overlap with habitat and wildlife issues as well. So I haven't been involved with drone issues in an official capacity in my work with Surfrider, but I do have experience with drones and drone users in my previous role as a wildlife interpreter on the coast, and those were oftentimes in conflict with wildlife. So yeah, I'm excited to represent recreational users that use the Oregon coast and hopefully come to some good rules. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. And then Laurel, do you want to jump in and introduce yourself as well?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Laurel Hillman. I work for Oregon Parks and Recreation Department. I'm the Ocean Shore Resource Coordinator. It looks like my virtual background is still loading. Can anybody see me or hear me? I don't know what that means. I've been having issues with Zoom today.
I can hear you. We don't see you yet.
Okay. I don't know what virtual
there you
background loading means. I've never had that message before. Do I have a weird virtual background? Is that what I
Just
can't
black.
even see myself? Okay,
Yeah.
weird. Okay. Anyway, so I've worked for parks for about 20 years and I've worked on the drone issue, I guess, sort of since drones became a thing in state parks.
Fantastic. And then there's one person that we don't have on the introductions list. Kenji was able to jump in kind of last minute, so I'm going to see if he's available to give himself an introduction here.
I am, Robert. Good to see
Great.
everybody. My name is Kenji Sugihara. I'm the director of the Oregon Department of Aviation. I am also the chair of the Emerging Aeronautics Committee for the National Association of State Aviation Officials. I've been in the drone industry for quite a long time and am an expert on a national expert on drones as well as drone detection and mitigation technologies as well. And I'm also a former Oregon Tourism Commissioner, so I've been to pretty much a lot of state parks throughout this state and know the state forwards and backwards. So I'm looking forward to working with everybody.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and keep moving forward here. Thank you again, all of you, for being here today. So I want to go a little bit into why we're here. So Senate Bill 109 in 2021, which really directed the Oregon Parks and Recreation Commission, and by extension OPRD, to develop rules for drone takeoff and landing in state parks. So what's important for this group to know is the legislature was pretty clear. These rules must balance two things, which is one, providing opportunities for people to enjoy recreational drone use, while also protecting the natural, cultural, scenic, and recreational resources of our parks. So while I know there's strong perspectives on both ends of the spectrum, some who want broad access and some would prefer strict limitations, our job really is, as directed by the legislature, is to help shape kind of a balanced, workable framework that honors both access and protection. That balanced approach is really the foundation for the draft rules and what we're discussing here today. So what is the RAC's role in this? The RAC really is that collection of subject matter experts and interested parties, and the goal is to provide recommendations and advice on these draft rules. So as we get into the draft rules, you'll be able to provide any recommendations or advice on the draft rules, whether it's the rules themselves specifically on the language or any effects you see that these rules are going to have that you want noted, and we'll take all of that into consideration as we continue to formulate the draft rules and then publish them for public comment. And then we compile all that together and then share that with our Parks and Recreation Commission, which will be the final decision maker on whether to approve these draft rules, not approve the draft rules, or approve them with any recommended changes from the commission. So just really wanted to make sure we're all on the same page of kind of what the purpose is today. And again, as I kind of started with, we won't specifically be editing the draft rules as we're going through today, but we will be kind of going line by line on those draft rules and taking comment as we go through it. As you saw in the agenda, we will jump into the draft rules here shortly. We're going to start with the park area rules, and then we'll move into the ocean shore rulemaking. So just be aware of that as we're going through, that there are different, very similar, but different rules for those two different subjects. So, and then I kind of want to go over a little bit of the classification criteria because this will be a question based off the draft rules. The current draft rules doesn't have this classification criteria in them, but this is the criteria that OPRD will be using when making any decisions on where to allow drones based off our adaptive management that we talked about in the first RAC. So if there's not any questions so far, I will go ahead and pull up the draft rules and get started, but I'll give a second in case anyone has any questions. Go ahead,
Can you go
Michael.
back to that last screen there so I can
Yeah.
get one more view of that, please? Thank you.
Yep. And there is another couple, or I guess it was all on the same page, but it scrolls down. Perfect. Emily, go ahead.
Just a quick comment for you. When we initially developed the information on that last slide, the yellow, green, red information, we were in the process of updating the Oregon Conservation Strategy, and so I can work with you to update terminology in there so that it is reflective of what's currently available. It looks like it's a little bit out of date.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. That would be helpful. Following the draft rules. Thank you. Alrighty, I'm gonna go ahead and see if I can stop sharing here, or at least move over to the draft rules. Perfect. Alrighty. Get this pulled up here. Can you guys see that screen?
Not yet.
Is taking some time. There
It's
we go.
starting now.
Perfect.
Now we can see.
Thank you. Alrighty. So, like I said, we're going to kind of go through this. So, current text that we have will be in black that is currently in the definitions and the rules. Any text in red would be addition to the current rule. I did put in blue text just for our reference here, which is the definition from the current ORS, since we do reference the ORS. It will not land in our rule, but it will be referenced in our rule. So I just wanted us to have that context. And then anything that is struck through will be removed from the current rule. So I just wanted to make that noted. So we'll jump in. Here is the park area rules, which is Division 10 of our OAR rules. The definitions was the first thing we updated, where we included unmanned aircraft system, which is defined in ORS 837.300. That definition is here in blue. We defined drone operation areas, which means a specific site or zone within park property that the department has designated, shown on an official map published on the department's website, where takeoff and landing of unmanned aircraft systems is permitted, subject to any conditions the department establishes. And then a drone pass system, which means a department authorization that allows one unmanned aircraft system to operate within the designated drone launch area on a specific date stated on the pass. I'll take a pause there and see if anyone has any questions or comments about these initial definitions. Perfect.
It looks like Joe has his hand up.
Oh, it's not showing on my screen, but go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, it's actually a different question. I just was curious for the RAC, can we only recommend changes to the red draft text, or is the black text open to change as well?
Black text would also be open to changes as well if there's anything that is noted that needs updating.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Any other questions? Perfect. Not seeing any. I'm going to scroll down. Oh, go
Well,
ahead.
actually, I'm sorry. I was going to ask about the drone operation area. So
Yeah.
that does that is the intention behind that to relegate the drone usage within that area? I know that, parks can only control takeoff and landing, and that FAA is responsible for when the drone is in the air. But is the intention there for the drone user to just operate within the area and not have the drone leave that area and go wider afield while it's in the air?
Yeah, so that would be the intention. A lot of our drone operation areas and the areas that we would decide on would hopefully be areas, as you looked at those green, yellow, and red areas, areas that aren't directly next to areas that we don't want drones, right? So we're not gonna make a drone operation area right next to an area where there's snowy plovers or peregrine falcons nesting, or right next to the campground where people would easily just fly into a campground, disturbing other visitors. So that's the intent. But like you said, once a drone is in the air and operating, we really can only control where people take off and land. So there will be definitely considerations of buffer zones in between these operation areas and where we wouldn't want drones to be.
Okay, thanks. And then a follow-up question to that is, will the only in the drone operation areas, will there be signage, or will there only be website acknowledgement? Because I think it doesn't say much about signage in the draft rules right now. It just mentions that there will be published map on the website. So I think it might be important to be explicit and say that there will be
Yeah,
other modes of ways to announce the site.
yeah, that's a great question. I think not being prescriptive on signage within the rules is beneficial for us to be able to put up signage when and where it's needed and as much as possible. I think any area that um, is going to be a drone operation area probably will be signed, but we'll likely leave that up to the park managers and field staff on the ground to help determine what's best. I don't want to say like every 50 feet of a drone operation area is going to be signed with boundaries and stuff like that in the rule, but that will be part of implementation is determining what types of signage and where signage is going to be most effective on top of what we include on the website.
I think it could be important to have at least mention of at the discretion of the park designated park official, signage will be placed in areas where needed, and then, maybe some criteria of what would be a determinant for that.
Yeah, that's a great comment. I'll add that in there to the notes and see if we want to throw in some additional language in there about signage on the ground itself.
Looks like Kenji has his hand up and then Kim.
Yep.
Okay.
So, quick thing for you, Joe. I think the biggest piece about this is if you look a little bit farther down, the real restrictions come in terms of the impacts of the drones, right? Which is what we're really trying to get at is we want to make sure that wildlife has been harassed or if they're not bothering people. So I think that's rather than putting in scope of like a drone operation area, I think the main focus is really what would be prohibited in terms of the practical impact. So I think that we should definitely take that into context when we think about the rule holistically. So
Yeah, thank you for that, Kenji. That's a great point.
Mhm.
Go ahead, Kim.
My question is, I need to have you kind of help me visualize this. I'd sort of visualize this as you've got a small area that's acceptable for takeoffs and landings, and then people can fly all over the park except maybe in certain areas. But it kind of sounds like from this that what you're envisioning is there would be the bigger area where they can fly is also where they can take off and land, and not, like there's a parking place and then hiking trails. That would be the kind of thing I was envisioning. Only they would be a drone flying area. And what you're envisioning is something that's much bigger than that, a bigger footprint.
Potentially. So that's a good question. Drone operation areas can be as big or as small as we define them. And the idea behind this was to simplify that drone operation area from geo mapping every single portion of every park to just having specifically defined areas, whether that's a specific parking lot or specific day use area of a given park as that drone operation area. So size isn't really a consideration initially in whether we're going to have them all be exactly one size or another. It's going to kind of be based off of the park. And the idea with that is um, once a drone's in the air, we have to rely on the regulations that we have further down in this rule, which is what we're trying to implement, which is the not harassing wildlife, not harassing other visitors and such. And so it's easiest in my experience to be able to enforce something if you provide a good space for people to operate from. Whereas if we wholesale just say like you can't operate the drone, someone could be flying from inside a car and we'd never know because they're they don't have a good place to operate from. So this operation area gives us a place that we can go if there's an issue or a specific wildlife is being harassed to try to find that operator and be able to address it there. Does that answer your question?
Sort of. So the operation area would be where people can stand while they're flying, not where
Correct.
the drones fly, but where the people are.
Yes. Where
Okay, that makes a whole
you're
lot more
standing
sense.
while you hold it. Yep.
I'm trying to picture, okay, if it's this fairly small area, like I'm picturing a parking lot, you can take off and land there and you can only fly in that area. That didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But if that's where the people have to stand, that makes more sense. I get it.
Yeah. Perfect.
Thanks.
Yep.
It looks like Justin is next and then Kaya.
Okay.
A quick comment on the explicit signage versus, kind of prescribed location, all that kind of stuff. So, from the field, when you're trying to enforce something, I'm for explicit signage, especially for rolling out something new, which is great. But ultimately, it falls on the recreation user. So I've had that thrown at me constantly. Like, there's no signs. I can camp here. There's no signs. I can shoot my guns here. Like all that kind of stuff. So my professional talking point is usually, it's up to the recreational user, just as it is for fishing regulations, hunting regulations, all that kind of stuff. So certainly for rollout as my individual management unit, I would want explicit signage out there, but there may be a time where that gets reduced as the rules roll out. But just it can go both ways. But I think ultimately we should be able to enforce and protect based on the recreational user's responsibility of knowing the rules. Just a quick comment on that.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Kaya, you're next.
Just a couple things. I also agree with the signs. Just even it gives you some cover to say, well, the signs are posted here. I also was wondering about the maps. So it sounds like, or I guess I'm just a little confused. Will there be maps published online that people can look up and see, like, what are the red areas, what are the green areas?
Yes. So the idea is to have wholly red or wholly green areas and not have that yellow in between zone and build that in as part of our implementation where we're not putting green zones right next to yellow or red zones. So the map, as we say here, will be published on the department's website ahead of time. And the idea is to just simplify those maps. We had initially planned on every park property having a full geospatial overlay that has all the green, yellow, and red zones on it. We're thinking now that in an effort to reduce the amount of staff time needed to map every single park, as well as just the individual flyer's ability to geolocate themselves on a map, to have specific areas that maybe are more blocky overlays. That is this park in this area, here's the green block of the map, versus having it be super prescriptive down to the feet of where that is.
Okay. And then, so the green areas will be the, what was it called? The, like, not the launch, the drone operation area. And
Correct.
then you said once the drones are in the air, it goes to the FAA to enforce. I'm just wondering how that will be done. If people can launch and land in the drone operation area, but then they can go and fly into a red area feasibly, how will that be mitigated?
Yeah, it's a great question, and a lot of that really relies on further down in this visitor conduct portion of this rulemaking, really talking about what is appropriate use of a drone, whether you're harassing wildlife or the effects on other visitors and such. Outside of that, we really do have to rely on the FAA on enforcement of areas that they might be allowed to fly into or not allowed to fly into, because we don't have the authority as park rangers to be able to enforce that.
Okay, thanks.
But if we see them harassing wildlife or whatever, then we can make a contact no matter where they are, even if they were in one of these drone operation areas. These other rules that we added in would still apply no matter what area they're in.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Alrighty. So we'll keep rolling forward. I'll scroll down so we're under the visitor conduct.
Oh, it looks like Carol has her, sorry, Kim has her hand up.
Perfect. Go ahead, Kim.
Sorry to belabor this, but when I read this, it doesn't tell me that a drone operation area doesn't convey necessarily to me that that's where the person needs to be versus the drone. And I wonder if that needs to be clarified. I mean, maybe that's a term of art that people who are in the drone field understand, but as an outsider, that's not what it meant to me.
Okay. I'll take a note of that. So you're saying that it doesn't seem initially clear that where takeoff and landing is permitted. It could be more clear that that's where the operator needs to be taking off and landing from.
Well, that's where the operator needs to be operating the drone from, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with Kim on that one, that it's not clear if we're saying operation and it's, it's not the old school probably of flying by wire, where the plane or the drone is actually attached by wire to the control. Are we talking about the place where the human operator exists in the world, or are we talking about the area in which the thing that is flying is going around, whether that is a foamy or a helicopter or a quadcopter, which is right more common these days? It's probably not totally clear.
Looks like Kenji and Emily both have their hand up.
Sure.
Okay.
So, Robert, here's a suggestion for you. So, for example, on number 9, a person may only operate an unmanned aircraft system from park property rather than on, and then that clarifies the situation that Kim brought up, and I think it's in Adam's. It would address Adam's concern as well.
Perfect. Yeah, I like that. Where 9 kind of clarifies that. So we'll jump into that one next and see if everyone has any other questions about that. But I think that would help alleviate that, with it being in the visitor conduct versus changing the definition of a drone operation area. All right, and one other person had their hand up.
That was me, Robert, but I was just seeking clarification if you were discussing the definition under 27 or details in 9, and you just clarified that, so
Perfect.
good to go.
All right, let's jump into the visitor conduct because it might answer some of the additional questions that people might have around this. So, part 9, a person may only operate an unmanned aircraft system, which is defined above, on park property wholly within a drone operation area designated under subsection B. A person must comply with all conditions set by the department, including any drone pass requirements under subsection E. A person must operate an unmanned aircraft system in a manner that is reasonable and prudent and relative to terrain, prevailing conditions, equipment, personal capabilities, and the safety of all park users and wildlife. And then a call out here for harassment of wildlife is prohibited under OAR 736-010-0050. Any questions there initially on that?
Looks like Kenji has a question.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So, Robert, one more thing on that. I think for under a manner that is reasonable, prudent, you might want to put in compliance with something to the fact in compliance with federal regulations as well. So that'll cover your Part 107. That'll cover your 44809. That'll also, which is the rule on recreational operations, and then that'll also cover eventually Part 108 as well. So that implicates a number of federal regulations without explicitly having to say it.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. Great comment. Thank you.
And Joe also has a comment.
Yeah, Robert, reasonable and prudent, that begs to just what does that mean exactly? Does there need to be more clarity around reasonable and prudent?
Yeah, good question. Um,
I wonder if in other like regulations that are similar, other rules, there could be more clarity on how you define reasonable and prudent.
yeah, I think the idea there was to really lean on that it's going to be safe given those conditions and leave that a little bit up to interpretation. Our enforcement officers on the ground have a little bit of officer discretion in any given situation where similar to speed limits, right? Like speed limit is a law, and so it's not necessarily enforceable by our park rangers, but if someone's racing through the campground on a bike that isn't safe, isn't operating in a safe manner, it's kind of up to the discretion of that enforcement officer at a given time on whether it is reasonable and prudent given that current situation. Because we don't know the wind speeds at any given time. We don't carry a lot of that. So having more specific definitions gives them less of an ability to enforce the rules in an unsafe situation.
Okay, thanks. I know that we did develop in the work group that developed the criteria, we also developed best practices recommendations, I think. I wonder if there needs to be a linkage to that somewhere in the rules as guidance for drone operators on what reasonable and prudent um, drone operation is like, supposed to be like.
Yeah, I think that gets really close to the line of trying to dictate their operation in the air, which wouldn't be under our authority. And so it is a good call out of like best practices, and that may be something that we develop internally as maybe a landing page for drone operation, that if we're going to call out an area that is a drone operation area, that we can outline some of our suggested best practices in the air for safe flying conditions. But that is a good call out, and I did see that document, so I can go back and reference that as we lean into implementation as well.
Okay.
I think the federal regulations provides a lot of, I don't know, substance to that as well. If you're flying within the federal regulations set by the FAA, that's kind of the basis of drone operations. So I think Kenji's suggestion to add federal regulations at the top of number 9 is kind of the foundation of where the rest of this kind of comes in. So I think keeping the federal FAA portion of this in mind throughout reading this is helpful.
I agree with that. I agree with that too. Some sort of explicit mention, my opinion, some sort of explicit mention of the FAA regulations. I mean, I think it's all always assumed, right? Because the feds always govern the states. So, like, to be very clear, like, I think that would be helpful for a lot of humans who go flying around. Like, if they're doing it the right way, they will know what that means.
Okay. Perfect. So I'm gonna keep going forward here. So the director or their designee may designate, modify, suspend, or rescind drone operation areas at any time based on visitor safety, resource protection, user conflict, operational constraints, or other management objectives. We'll pause there for a second because I'm sure there'll probably be a couple questions about this. I'm
It looks like Joe.
perfect. Hands are not popping up on my screen, so
No problem. Yeah, so for this one, again, I guess I'm just wondering about the criteria that the director or their designee may use. And I know that there's visitor safety, resource protection, user conflict, but what exactly would be user conflict? What would be deemed to be visitor safety? And I guess put more criteria there to help define the decisions to modify, suspend, or rescind.
Yeah, it's a good question. The idea really, again, kind of like we talked about in the first RAC, is to lean into that adaptive management because we recognize parks and places change very quickly. And so, um, similar to your comment on user conflict, I know me and you talked a little bit privately, but in areas like let's use Vista House as a good example. Sometimes it's just so busy that it's not an appropriate place because of the amount of visitation, and parks change frequently. Um, there could be one day that a TikTok is posted and a new park becomes the major place for people to want to go visit and take pictures, and just the amount of visitation may require us to limit drone operation there just because there's so many visitors at one point, and it would cause a user conflict having drones in the air with that amount of visitation, just as an example. And so it's really leaning into that adaptive management. So OPRD can use the criteria that we have established in that work group to help guide us on times whenever conditions change quickly.
Thanks. As a follow-up, um, is there a report written by the designee? I assuming a lot of times this would probably be the park ranger. Is there, when they do make a decision to modify, suspend, or rescind a drone operation area, would there be documentation of the specific reason why? Um, I think that might be good to have so that anyone that reviews that, anyone from the public or wherever wants to understand why the decision was made like that, they could look at some documentation in the public record that says specifically this is why that decision was made.
Yeah, it's a great question. And as part of this process, there's the implementation side of things, right? And so we'll have internal policy and or procedure to help guide park managers, district managers, or whoever it might be that is these designees making these decisions. And so I'll take a note of that we have a specific process in that policy that calls out documentation that is available for public records requests and such on when those decisions are made and why.
Yeah, it could be something added into the rule language just saying that, after that statement in section B there, like, and this will be provided with, specific reasoning will be provided in the public record in this way, or something like that. Just some acknowledgement that there would be documentation as to the decision made.
Okay, thank you for that.
Kenji.
Yeah, and Joe, I agree with you 100%. So just wanted to comment that from aviation standpoint, having that transparency in any decision-making process is absolutely crucial. So I'll emphasize that from my department as well.
Okay.
And Michael.
Yeah, a quick question just for a little bit of clarification on this one. Is this for in the short term or long term perspective of drone operation areas? Is this something where it's like, oh, today it's really windy, so we're closing down the drone operation area? Or is it more like we are deciding to permanently close this for this season because it's busy during summer or something? Is it both,
Yeah.
I guess?
It's a good question, and it can be both because there's a lot of times where, because of hazardous situations or whatever, park areas might be closed, certain activities might be limited just based off of something that happened that day. So that's a possibility. And obviously, those are the ones we want to try to limit as much as possible because we want to provide as much insight and forethought into any of these decisions as we can. So that's why we have it. If we're adding or rescinding on that longer term scale, would be that like 30-day window of like, hey, we want to post it on the website and let people know it's changing, and give as much of a heads up as possible. But it's also not limiting the ability in an emergency situation or whatever it might be to suspend operations on a given day. We run into that often in the park of, life flight comes into a park and there's a reasonable concern there of, hey, we need to have all drones out of the air, helicopters coming in and someone's life's at risk. And so situations like that, we still want the ability to say, hey, we're suspending, given a certain specific situation.
And I
Justin.
just
Oh, go
saying,
ahead.
like, totally understand that. I think that makes sense. And I think for all these rules, they're kind of written in a way that it empowers the people on the ground making the decision to do the enforcement in the way that's needed in the moment. I think it's kind of empowering people that are there to decide for themselves rather than saying, oh, here's the exact thing that's listed out. Here's the lines that are not to be crossed. It kind of lets the people there on the ground making the decisions make those determinations.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that.
And Justin.
Yeah, thanks. I was just going to add kind of to all of those different comments that, we already try our best. It's not like a requirement, but we try our best to put stuff on the website for especially those short term and kind of sudden things. So I think having that flexibility to do short term and long term. So maybe if these rules get adopted, that it's a requirement for the park manager to post those notifications for transparency, rather than like if we remember, or hopefully we do it as a best practice. So
Yeah.
good thing.
Perfect. So I'm going to keep going forward here and get a couple more parts in, and then I'll take some more comments. So drone operation area designations may cover an entire park property or any sub area, and may be year-round or limited by season, time of day, or other conditions. The department will publish a map of each drone operation area and its conditions on the website at least 30 days before the designation becomes effective, except when immediate action is required in an emergency. The department may require a drone pass as a condition of using the drone operation area. By drone pass, the department may limit the number of unmanned aircraft systems allowed per day or impose other use limits. Failure to obtain or comply with a required drone pass is a Class A violation. So I'll pause there. There's a lot to take in there, but I'll open it up for questions again. Go ahead, Emily.
Thank you. And I just wanted to insert a couple questions here before I have to disappear right at 2. Thanks for being flexible with me. So just a couple questions about Part D and then Part E. I'm not sure if you got quite all the way there. But with Part D, are you able to share which drone operation areas are already developed or drafted, or is there a timeline when we could anticipate those?
Yeah, we don't have those specifically outlined yet. I'm working with our natural resource teams to identify those areas that would be wholly green right now as an initial rollout point. So in that work group where we have those green, yellow, red zones, we're really trying to identify some specific parks that don't have any reason to be yellow or red, and then roll those out. So we're working internally with our natural resource folks to identify those. The hope is to not roll this out in the middle of a busy summer season whenever our park staff are already overwhelmed with the amount of visitation and use in a park. And so it depends on this process, our public comment process. At the end of this, I know you have to hop off, but if you go back and watch the remainder of this RAC, I do have our timeline outlined at the end of our slideshow there that we'll go over. But the idea is to be able to present this to our Parks and Recreation Commission in February and get a little bit of an idea of what our implementation timeline is, and try not to roll it out right before or right during the summer season. So it'll be kind of flexible depending on how each step of the process goes.
Awesome, thank you. And then you clarified one of my other questions was just making sure I understood what was going into the designation. And so did I hear correctly that it is that green, yellow, red criteria that we discussed in great depth in that working group?
Yes, yeah, we're going to utilize all of the information from that working group to make those designations and the criteria for those designations, and then at least in an initial phase, really only roll out only green areas.
Awesome. And then my small clarification on E, if I can just keep rolling. Thank you guys for being graceful with me. So just thinking, Western snowy plover management areas are already established, but looking ahead 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, things aren't looking great for a lot of wildlife across the board. And I would anticipate, like many of us, that we're going to see more species identified as threatened, endangered, or in need of some kind of management. Would you anticipate having those conversations as we see or document declines of some of those species that OPRD can help conservation of? Like, how does that feedback loop work? And how do we make sure that we're collaborating on things like adding more restrictions similar to E, to make sure that we have best information in hand for you guys?
Yeah, really good question. And yes, the idea behind all of these rules is to really provide that adaptive management for situations like that, where, whatever it might be, whether it be specific wildlife or heritage, cultural areas that are identified, whatever it might be, that we're adaptively managing that and then implementing either addition of drone operation areas, removal of drone operation areas, or more specific limited restrictions within the drone pass system. And so kind of the idea of that drone pass system is the areas that we recognize might be really sensitive at certain times of the year and then not sensitive at others, or maybe specific times that we can have this drone pass that is on our website that someone has to acknowledge, hey, I know this rule, this rule, this rule. These are the things I need to look out for. I'm acknowledging I understand these things by getting this drone pass, and then have, specific, more detailed maps of those specific areas as well in that pass system, so people can be equipped with all of the information to be successful in drone flight, and while still protecting our cultural, natural areas.
Super helpful. Thanks, Robert.
Yeah, of course.
Looks like Kenji has his hand up.
Yep, and Emily, I'm asking for on the converse too. For example, bald eagles are everywhere now, so I imagine that can be part of the conversation as well.
I imagine we can have that conversation elsewhere, but bald eagles, while yes, their population is doing great, are protected by more laws than most species, so that might create some challenges. But we could chat bald eagles all day, Kenji.
Absolutely.
Thank you. All right, Joe, I see your hands up.
Yeah, thanks. Again, in part D, publish a map. I feel like it'd be great to have other ways to inform not only the drone operators but the public on the drone operating areas, because I think, if you just publish a map, how is the public going to find out about it? And maybe there's more to it, because you were mentioning if there is a drone pass that there would be a packet or something that once a drone pilot registers, I guess, then they would have those resources. So I think that's great. But again, the public at large would probably want to know as well. So I think some other language in there, publish a map, provide other resources
Yeah.
via signage, but other ways too, social media, whatever.
Yeah, and we'll have a website that's specifically dedicated to this that is publicly available. We've also, over the past couple years, we've really tried to do our best on our social media outreach as well around park rules outreach in general, informing the public of what our park rules are and where. So I imagine a combined effort to be able to share this information out as much as possible. And with that 30 days heads up allows us to be able to be more equipped to provide that information out to the public, whether it be for those drone users or non-drone users. And then, yeah, to your point, this is the drone pass system, just for clarification from everyone here, will not be part of the initial rollout, but gives us the ability to do so in the future, where in those areas that we identified could sometimes be allowed, we can implement the drone pass system. And I envision it, this isn't how it is decided to operate, but I envision it kind of like our campsite reservation system, where it'd be a limited or nominal fee, if there is even a fee associated, where you can check out or get that pass for that given day. You have the acknowledgments of that area, you have a map of that area, and that's all part of your collection of that pass for that specific day. And then being able to limit, whether it be the amount of drones, the amount of time you're there, or whatever it might be at that time.
Okay, great. And then just the second question regarding the drone pass is, why is there going to be, it says department may require, why not shall require? It seems like making it mandatory for drone pilots to get in that system would be a really great way to connect them to all those resources and regulations.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think part of it is just making sure that, to not make a pun of this, but to land some level of drone rules and get some level of implementation out there and see how it works, because it's not going to be a vast rollout across the whole park agency, right? We're identifying a limited number of parks, and we don't want for those areas that there's not really any concern or consideration to say that someone needs to get a pass or a permit for that. And we want to promote certain areas as drone operation areas, um, and have that kind of balanced recreation approach. And so if we put must or any other word there besides may, it would require us to do a drone pass for every single area that we identify, even if there's not necessarily a need.
Yeah, I guess I would just follow up by saying if it's going to stay May, maybe putting in some kind of decision point at when a drone pass will be required and when not. If it's going to be if it's going to be an option to have both, not have one in some places and have some in other places, then there should be more criteria listed in the rules of what that is, or reference to something to help determine that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point to add there. Thank you.
And then finally, one more thing on the drone pass. Is there a possibility to have a fee with that? Because, I assume that, parks will it's going to be putting more resources into drone regulations, and it would be nice if there's some revenue for you all to do all that work in parks.
Yeah, it's a good question, and it has not been decided yet. It may or may not be, and I don't think it needs to be necessarily called out in rule at that point initially. And if at that point we decide there is a fee, we may reopen the rulemaking to add that or not. But as of right now, there's not been a decision around that.
Okay,
Yeah,
thanks.
Robert, if there was going to be a fee, I'm sorry to jump in. If there was going to be a fee in the future, that would require a new, I don't know, not necessarily a rack, but like it wouldn't just be like, like, hey, there's a fee now, like big surprise, but it would require some sort of new process to make that happen.
Correct. Yeah, I don't assume we would ever just implement a massive fee for drones without having some sort of public process.
Kaya is next, and then Kenji.
Yeah, I do think that the outreach on these rules is going to be super crucial. And I was wondering, has it been discussed or researched? I know that some drones have like an accompanying app. I don't know if that's all drones, but has it been discussed working with those app creators to get these rules and maps like somehow uploaded into those apps to get them into the hands of drone users? And then additionally, I do tend to agree with Joe, requiring everybody to get a drone pass would be an easy way to get that information straight into everybody's hands. But yeah, those are my thoughts.
Yeah, it has not been discussed yet, but that is a good comment. I have um I have a drone as well, and so uh having those maps within the app is very nice to have, and so it could be something that we look at in the future if we as we look to broaden or whatever we do with this drone pass system. So and then
Kenji.
yeah,
Yeah,
just
to key off of that, these maps will be data layers, right? So GIS. That's first question.
yeah, potentially. So part of this was to limit the amount of staff time needed on creating GIS mapping and maybe make something simpler initially.
Okay.
I imagine the farther we get into this and after kind of this first phase and see how it goes, it could be something that we look at in those drone pass areas where there's GIS mapping.
Yeah, the reason I ask that with the GIS map layer, what you can then do that is feed that to a Loft and some of these software companies like Kaya was just mentioning that are used for Lance authorizations, etc. And then even before you fly, right? So you do that. I know in some of the software products, the apps that are out there, they already include parks in other states. So this is something that's not new to them, and I think that would be a very, very valuable sort of a way to inform. And they can even have a piece where it says, "Okay, click on this; it'll direct you to wherever." And
Yeah,
that might be a third party service provider that you can engage with too. So.
yeah, that's a really good comment. I wrote it down, and yeah, I definitely could see us doing something like that in the implementation and rollout of this, especially as we expand.
And if you need introductions to any of those folks, let me know.
Okay, sounds good. Will do. Adam,
Yeah, just
go.
it's something that has been like tickling my brain a little bit, and I don't think it's the end of the world or anything like that. Just, we're saying drone, 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 and I think for most of us, maybe all of us, typically anyone at this point in time in 2025, when they hear drone or when we say drone, we're thinking of something with four propellers that can hover, probably has a camera, great chance that yes, it connects to your cell phone and has GPS and that sort of thing. But also any remote control airplane or helicopter is technically a drone. And so I just wonder in terms of the nomenclature that is being used, I don't know if it's worth parsing it out some way or another, but it's just like not all drones are equal, I guess is what I mean.
Yeah,
Uh in the flying world. And I think that I mean I'm coming from a place where I'm in a remote control airplane club where the average age is 70. Okay. And like nobody's flying drones in the way that we're talking about it. And yet, like the planes that those guys are flying are definitely drones because there's no human in it.
mhm.
And maybe Kenji has an idea about this. I just wanted to say it out loud because I think it's important for the discussion.
Yeah, perfect. I'll let Kenji go ahead and run with it. I'm sure
Yeah.
he has some great ideas.
So it might be just UAS operation area, right? So just make it simple. Because that encompasses a lot of different things. You have calls, you have your fixed wings, which inevitably the RC crowd really falls into, right? So it's all encompassing. It's easy. People get it. UAS drones, just a way of describing it, but yeah, being a little bit more technical on that side, I think we'll get more universal acceptance and understanding what that means.
Okay, perfect. So I'm gonna go ahead and jump into this next section here, and then I'll take some more comments. I'd like to get through this part so we can move on to our ocean shore rulemaking as well, and make sure we give some equal time there. So um, the following areas remain closed to drone operation areas and may not be designated as a drone operation area, which is our overnight facilities as defined in OAR 736.010.0015, and any area explicitly closed to unmanned aircraft systems by statute or other rule. Public safety agencies may operate in emergencies without prior approval. An operation of an unmanned aircraft system in violation of this section is a Class A violation. And then number 10, I want to point this one out too. A person must obtain, we're changing this a little bit just in consideration of future upcoming rules and or permits that we have planned. We're removing the language of special use permit out of this because um, we're looking at adding some additional types of permits. So just changing that to must obtain a permit from the department for any activity or use within a park property that goes into the following. So I'm going to actually pause just before that and let people ask a question about any of these specifically closed areas. Go ahead, Kenji.
Yeah, so not really closed. My concern is with G. So do you necessarily want to limit it to public safety agencies? I'm thinking more public agencies, thinking about ODOT or whatever, if they need to do an emergency operations or some sort, or maybe aviation has to do something. So just not limiting it to public safety, it would be my recommendation. especially because we do have occasional emergencies that we have to deal with.
Okay. Yeah, I'll take note of that. That sounds reasonable, but I'll do a little bit more digging and see if that sounds good to
And we can
others
chat
as well.
offline too. I'm more than
Yeah.
happy. Yeah.
Go ahead, Michael.
What's a Class A violation?
So Class A violation, our authority allows us to write violations in between Class A and Class D. Actually, I'll tap Justin on this because he's probably dealt with this a little bit more recently than I have and see if he can answer that a little bit better.
Yeah, I was thinking that outsiders may wonder what that is, how much it is, all that kind of stuff. So Class D is the most common rule violation for our state park OARs, and that is $115 presumptive fine. So Class A violation is the biggest one we have, and that is a 440 presumptive fine. Now, before you hear those numbers, and as drone operators, like whoa, back to officer discretion. So that's going to be a huge judgment call as someone who has that authority. Like unless I don't even want to pick a scenario, I couldn't tell you, but unless it's egregious, it's you're running into a nesting and fledglings are killed. I don't know what it is, right? But unless it's egregious, at least for me, it's going to be the totality of circumstances to where a citation like that is actually issued. It would usually start at the lowest level, which is conversation, education, this and that, asking for compliance. And then if there's, a back and forth of resistance, then move to the next steps. But it would be very circumstantial and situational to where that Class A violation would occur, in my opinion, based on me dealing with it one on one.
If it's Class A, does that mean I mean, is it a traffic ticket or is it a misdemeanor?
It's not a misdemeanor. It's neither. Yeah, like traffic ticket. OARs are administrative rules where other things are law enforcement. We don't enforce any laws. We enforce rules. So yeah, it would be lower level there. Not a misdemeanor even. I was just gonna say something, but I forgot. So yeah,
Yeah. No,
does that
that's
help
perfect.
that?
In our rules, Katie might have more information as well, but by calling it out as a Class A, it really gives us that authority to jump to that in those situations where we need it, where the officer discretion really determined that this is a really egregious situation, and we want to show that it is egregious and resort to that higher level fine.
Typically for park resource damage, those are Class A violations.
Yeah.
Okay. It's just not super clear if that's the worst or the least worst or what that even means, I guess. If you're trying to deter people from doing something, it might be good to have like up to $440 or something that's like sounds scary, I guess.
Yeah.
That might be more of a deterrent than a letter. Because I don't know what that means. If I'm
Yeah.
like, I could see someone just being like, oh, well, what does that mean? I don't know. I'll just go for it. It probably won't matter.
Yeah, no, that's a good call out. Thank you for that. Kenji?
We've had that super fast. We've had that where someone pushes back, like, what's the fine? $115. Great, I'll pay it right now, that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah.
then again, officer discretion is like, okay, that doesn't solve the problem. So we might have a higher level of an order to leave, which is an eviction or an exclusion, where it's at minimum 30 days banned from the property. So there's lots of different situational things. But yeah, making it sound, I guess, more scary could could be a thing. But
Good help. Yeah. Perfect.
So
Kenji?
the question that I have is there a presumptive fine associated with it? And is there a maximum fine? I imagine there is, but that's a question. And then would language be better be served by saying up to and including a Class A violation? So rather than have it as up to and including a Class A violation.
I found some web results.
Yeah. Yeah, that could be really good. So your initial question there, yeah, there is a presumptive fine and then a maximum fine associated with each class of of violations there.
And that's why I'm recommending that it can go all the way up to the Class A violation instead of saying it's presumptively A is
Okay.
right off the bat a Class A violation.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Let's keep going here. I'm going to read through 10 and try to cover as much as I can through here, and then we'll jump into questions. So again, back to that permit, removing the special use permit out of there because there might be multiple different types of permits, whether that be scientific permits, commercial use permits, or whatever going forward. And so a person must obtain a permit if it's a organized group or activity attended by more than 50 people. This is a lot of our language that we've had for a long time, but uses a portion of park property to the exclusion of other persons or the department, modifies or embellishes park property, places structures such as tents, chairs, arches, and other similar structures on park property in a manner outside of normal recreational use as determined by the park manager or enforcing officer, uses public address, amplification, or lighting, charges money for participation or admission, involves the sale of products or services, could disrupt the natural, cultural, scenic, and recreational resources in the park property or adjacent areas, or could pose safety or access concerns for other park users. And then we added in these two portions here. Involves the operation of an unmanned aircraft system outside of a designated drone operation area, or involves the operation of an unmanned aircraft system for commercial or research purposes on any portion of park property. So I'll pause there because I'm sure we have some questions. Kenji, go ahead.
I'm wondering, I'm just not straightforward in my head. Wasn't there an exemption statutorily for utility operators? I'm trying to remember off the top of my head.
I don't know off the top of my head either if there is an exemption or not.
Okay. I'll take a look. I'll get back to you.
Okay. Okay. Other questions?
This one to me just reminds me of what Kim brought up earlier, and maybe it's already taken care of. Is it sort of goes back to, well, where's the human standing that's operating as opposed to the airspace, and maybe it's, I mean, I guess what I'm hearing is it's kind of outside of the purview here. Once it's up in the air, it's an FAA thing, but that part, I think that part would maybe be the most confusing thing as someone who likes to fly is like, well, you have to stand here to do it, but once it's up in the air, you can kind of go anywhere. And
Yeah.
maybe that's just where we're at, and that's a limitation. But somehow that idea of, I think for some of us at least, we're thinking like, where can I fly, not where do I have to stand while I fly.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I think, it references section 9, which is where we added that from the person must fly from this location. And so it might be good to maybe add some language from section 9 here just to make it more clear since it's a little separated from the initial. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, I just was curious about where the 50 people, that number came from. It seems like that might be kind of high for drone use.
Yeah, so this portion in black is really in regards to our special use permits in general. So that's always been a stipulation for, large gatherings, whether it's a birthday or anything. So really this black portion here isn't necessarily in relation to drone use. It's that part I and J that is in relation to drone use.
Okay.
Alrighty. So not seeing any other hands up, I'm gonna go ahead and scroll down. So we're gonna jump into ocean shore rules. And so a lot of this is going to seem really duplicative, but we want to have it in both sections, in both our park area rules as well as our ocean shore rules. So we'll go through this, but you'll see a lot of the similar language in these definitions here. So we still define the unmanned aircraft system under ORS 837.300.4. And then we go into the visitor conduct kind of right away. So person may only operate an unmanned aircraft system on the ocean shore within a drone operation area designated under subsection B. The person must meet, not meets, must meet any drone pass requirements under subsection F. So if there's a requirement for a drone pass and they meet that under subsection F, then they would have to acquire it. I see Kenji, you got your hand up?
Yeah, just the same comments from before on most of this, but the first one is just from, right, instead of
Yep.
on. Yeah, it's almost identical. So
It does make it helpful to add the from.
Yeah.
So I'll go ahead and read through a couple of these and then I'll pause if there's any hands up at that point. So person must operate an unmanned aircraft system in a manner that is reasonable and prudent relative to terrain, prevailing conditions, equipment, personal capabilities, and the safety of all park users and wildlife. Again, harassment of wildlife is prohibited under OAR 736 0100055. The director or designee may designate, modify, suspend, or rescind a drone operation area at any time based off visitor safety, resource protection, user conflict, operational constraints, or other management objectives. Drone operation areas designations may cover an entire ocean shore area or any section and may be year-round or limited by season, time of day, or other conditions. The department will publish a map of each drone operation area and its conditions on the website at least 30 days before the designation becomes effective, except when immediate action is required in an emergency. Pause there. Laurel, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Can you hear me? Sorry, I've been having issues with. Okay. I was just pointing out that you still have the word park users, and although the ocean shore is a state recreation area, I wonder whether we might want to consider not everybody thinks of people recreating on the beach as a park user, and they might, anyway, there might be misconceptions about what that means. Does it only mean people that are in a state park? Or I just wonder about the use of park user in that context. Maybe it's fine just flagging it for thinking about it.
We'll make note of it and see if there's some different language there we might want to use. Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little confused. Could you explain how this proposed Ocean Shores rules is different from the first one that we looked over for the OPRD?
Yeah, so the management of drones we're trying to keep pretty consistent across all state park property. We just have specific rules governing the ocean shore versus park property. So in our OARs, there's separated. There's Division 21, which is ocean shore rules, and there's Division 10, which is park area property rules. So if we only put it in park area property, it's not considered the same as ocean shore, but the actual implementation and rule language is very similar. We want it to be consistent, whether it's ocean shore or park property.
Okay. Does that mean that it's any ocean shores, or is it ocean shores within state parks?
So all of the ocean shore is governed by OPRD. So the entire ocean shore is the purview of OPRD under Division 21 of 736.
Okay. I guess that was the main question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Laurel, I see your hand up again.
It just didn't go down.
Oh,
because
perfect.
I'm having
No worries.
lots of issues with Zoom today.
I
I
can
pressed
lower
lower
it for
hand and
you.
it won't lower. I don't
Don't
know.
worry. I got it. Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, just for the record, that the same comments I had for this previous section be mirrored in this section that are, the language is the same.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I'll make note of that. Not seeing any other hands. I'm gonna keep going forward. So restrictions for Western Snowy Plover management areas described in OAR 736-021-0090 apply to the operation of unmanned aircraft systems. The department may require a drone pass as a condition of using a drone operation area. By pass, the department may limit the number of unmanned aircraft systems allowed per day or impose other use limits. Again, failure to comply with a required drone pass is a Class A violation. Public safety agencies may operate in emergencies without prior approval. and operating an unmanned aircraft system in violation of this section is a Class A violation. So I'll mirror some of the same language that we talked about in the above section of maybe up to a Class A violation and many of the other comments that we already went through on the similar language in the park area rules. Any questions on this? It's pretty similar. So go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, just around section E about the restrictions for the Western Snowy Plover management areas. What about other protected areas on the coast, like the Rocky Habitat designated areas or the Marine Reserve shoreline areas? And maybe Laurel can answer that, but I would assume those would have restrictions on drone use as well.
Yeah, I'll let Laurel go shortly after this, but yeah, we'll still use a lot of the same considerations for whether it's going to affect the wildlife in that given area, similar to what the work group talked about, those classification criteria of what would be considered a drone operation area. But we just wanted to make sure we had the call out for the snowy plover management areas here, and unmanned aircraft systems.
I guess I would just come back and say, why not have it for the other places too? I guess is there
Yeah.
no, yeah.
It's a good question. Laurel, do you have any additional info there that you'd want to talk about, or?
There are already rules that apply that restrict drones in those areas, so I think this is just a reference to existing rules. I don't think it's off the table to list them out potentially, but they are going to be considered when designating the various categories because of our criteria. So I don't know that there's necessarily added value to just explicitly listing them because some, places change over time. So it makes it simpler to not have it all listed out, but they definitely would be considered in that process for identifying areas that would have resource conflicts, and all of those designated areas have lots of different at least seasonal resource conflicts for wildlife.
Yeah.
So it's a conversation that we can have, but I wouldn't be worried about it either way.
Okay, perfect. I'll make note of it anyway, so we can have that conversation as we continue to look at these draft rules. Michael?
I guess I'm curious if it's not needed to be listed out specifically for these other rocky habitat areas. I mean, I've seen signs at snowy plover areas where it says no drones and things like that. I mean, is that to kind of think backwards? There's already some signage and designation stuff saying that you can't fly drones in snowy plover areas. Am I incorrect in thinking that?
We do sign seasonally our snowy plover management areas, not just for drones, but for other uses that are prohibited per
Okay.
our habitat conservation plans, like bikes and vehicles and people
Gotcha.
in the dry sand. So,
Okay. I would say that if these places are designated as like no drones are allowed in these areas for any type of wildlife meanings or any type of wildlife reasons, I would say put those on maps and make it very specific and clear. Because as a drone operator, like I go on and I check Aloft and I check the air maps and I look and see, are there closures? Are there restrictions? And if I don't see something, it's like, oh, well, okay, then it's open. So
Yeah.
if you're not listing it in places where people are checking for drone restrictions, then you're hitting maybe half of the people flying drones.
Yeah.
Because I didn't even really know that state parks controls the management of within all the Oregon beaches. So I wouldn't have thought to check the website necessarily for those type of restrictions or mandates and things like that. So I would just say if you're not listing it, people aren't going to see it.
Yeah, that's a good call out. And that's something in those maps that we will definitely be doing. Like I mentioned before, we had green, yellow, and red zones. We're only going to have green and red zones. So every zone that is not green is going to be labeled as red on that map, to make it very clear to the public what areas are being managed by us and which ones we're prohibiting that drone operation from. And we'll do our best, I'm imagining at some point, to help coordinate with other resource protection agencies in the area, such as some of the offshore islands and stuff that we don't necessarily manage, but other agencies might have restrictions on and stuff. So making sure we list those as well if it's close enough to a drone operation area that there is valid concern. So trying to make sure we have that as much as possible. And then again, as we roll out these rules, trying to do good, adequate public outreach to let people know that, yes, we are the one that manages the ocean shore, and these are the restrictions that we have around drones in these areas. So, Adam, go ahead.
Yeah, my thought is about something from just a couple of minutes ago. So if there's anyone else that has a thought about what we're talking about right now, I don't want to derail that at all.
I don't see any other hands up, so go
Okay,
ahead.
so it was just on the 50 people thing. And just to put it out there, two thoughts I had. One, I would imagine maybe, I mean, it's a nice round number, so that's cool, but like maybe this would be the sort of thing where there's an event, like something like a drone show, where someone is bringing in like a couple hundred drones, and instead of fireworks, they're sending them up in the sky to do a light show or something like that. Works well for that. And then also, at least down here in Eugene at Lane Community College, there's a drone program at the community college. And I think right now it's around, there's around 30 students or so per year. So depending on the class, like sometimes from what I've heard in the future classes, like they will go to the beach and go fly. And so not having to have, and maybe it's covered in a different place, but not having to have the community college, go get a permit so they can, do class out on the beach for a day in a safe way. Like that number is probably pretty good. So that's all, just positive feedback.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, um, we've recognized for a while that our special use permit was a little outdated based off the use we're seeing in state parks. So we're working currently to try to update not only the language around the special use permit, but commercial use permits and scientific permits or educational permits or what that might look like going forward. And so, definitely keep an eye out for any of that in the coming year as we work towards rules around that as well. So scroll back down to where we were. All of the commercial activities and non-traditional activities again captured here as they have been previously. It's very similar to what we read up above, but in the on the ocean shore. And then all we added really here is this part H, which involves the operation of unmanned aircraft system outside of a designated drone operation area as provided in OAR 736-021-0100. And so just to clarify this section, which we had in both, so this allows for anyone, whether it be for commercial, scientific, research purposes, or general recreation, to still be able to submit a permit request to fly outside of a drone area. In any of those circumstances, a park manager and or the person they're submitting the permit to will still take into consideration all of the existing criteria on whether an area would be allowed to have drones or not, to help influence or guide those decisions on whether they would authorize a permit at that time, whether that's because they can mitigate some of the user conflict concerns with that permit, whatever it might be, and that would be up to that field manager to be able to make that decision, or headquarters person, depending on what permit it is. So it still allows for that outside of those drone operation areas. Any questions? That's the end of our draft rules. So I'll pause there and let people raise their hands. So go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, I guess for the Oregon Shores area, are you thinking that there are going to be specific operation areas? Because we're talking 360 some miles of coastline. Are you thinking it's going to be mostly green with few specific areas where there's going to be places where you can't take off and operate from? Or are you going to have like, here's a block every mile or something you can take off and operate from?
Yeah, there's a ton of considerations there. So we'll work with the Ocean Shores team and any of our preservation partners or other agencies in there to identify those areas that really do match that holy green, where there's no resource concerns, there's no user conflict concerns and such. again, the idea behind this is to really be an adaptive management focus as we go forward. So as we roll out some areas that might be wholly green, seeing how it works. And if it's working good and we don't need to change the rules or make adjustments, maybe there's a couple more added or whatever it might be, but really focusing on trying to balance that approach on the recreation areas while still protecting the resources. And then I know kind of to answer probably your concern, especially around commercial use, there still is that permit option for those people who would like to apply for a permit, and it might be over an extended period of time that you apply for a permit and you acknowledge the rules and you're going to fly in certain areas only or whatever it might be. So but initially, there probably won't be massive sections or large sections of the Oregon shore that is allowed for drone use.
Okay. And it's essentially if you're doing anything commercially on the beaches, you would need a permit.
Yeah, so we haven't gotten to that point yet. We're working on those draft rules. We're still in kind of that research phase of commercial use rules. We haven't had those before, but we're in that process of trying to determine that. And so there will be another RAC as well as public comment period and everything as we determine commercial use activity rules and what that looks like and what the permit might be like. That's
Okay.
upcoming.
I have one other question, but Dawn has her hand up. I'll let Dawn talk.
Yeah.
Some of what I share will just address what you're asking to Michael. In the working group and under the red prohibited criteria right now, you can see that the third criteria in pink is I'll read it, area sharing a boundary to federally or state protected areas explicitly prohibiting drone takeoff and landing will be in the red, and all offshore islands on the Oregon coast that are exposed at mean high tide and not connected to the mainland are part of Oregon Islands National Wildlife Refuge. And so that is a federal area that prohibits launching and landing of drones. So with this criteria, any beach or even park associated with beach property would also adopt our same criteria. And the main reason for that is to protect nesting seabirds in the summer from drones that would, potentially flush them from their nest or flush them from their rocks and islands. So, when you're asking like, are large swaths going to be closed or open? That's one of the criteria, is that it would align with the federal launching and landing prohibition on all of those islands.
So I've done some flying in some of these areas where there is rocky islands and whatnot. And from talking to federal managers or whatnot, I was told that it's essentially, it's kind of the impacts of disturbing birds. And if you're flying close enough to disturb the birds, then you're too close type of thing. That doesn't necessarily mean that if you're taking off adjacent to these areas that you're disturbing birds, though, correct?
It depends on the time of year too, right? So that's where some of that yellow comes in with the stoplight approach. Is it in the winter time, like right now, if you were to launch a drone near an offshore island, the offshore island might have no wildlife on it that would be disturbed. So that might be a time that State Parks is going to put that criteria in yellow. But in the summer, let's say Seal Rock is a good example or Haystack Rock at Cannon Beach. It's iconic, everyone knows it. That area in the summertime, a reasonable drone operator could assume that launching at any time in the middle of summer would disturb birds because we have actively nesting birds, some of which are highly tuned in to drones and disturbed by them, some that you have to get pretty close. So it's not equal across the board bird disturbance. And those who operate drones probably notice that. Black oyster catchers, a species of concern, are highly tuned into them. Western gulls seem to be a little more lackadaisical. But all of those species are nesting on that island. So midsummer at Haystack Rock, launching in front of Haystack Rock, would really, we want it to be aligned with what the federal standards would be to protect those nesting birds.
Yeah, thank you, Dawn. And I think the big point here to really hone in on is that this is an adaptive process that we work on, right? And so what we implement on stage one of these drone rules is not going to be the same as what it is 5 years from now. And so as we get green zones out there, we'll see how it works. We'll see what issues we run into and then make changes based off that. And then implement the drone pass system for those yellow areas that we might be able to, seasonally allow it. So it is going to be kind of that flexible process and kind of learning what works and what doesn't, especially as technology changes, our parks change, visitation changes, and wildlife changes. And so it'll be complex, and it will continue to be complex, and we'll work on constantly being able to take in comments, whether that be from drone users who want additional areas added or people who identify new nesting areas that might happen. So it'll be that constant conversation kind of back and forth to make sure we're doing our best to continue to balance this approach while also still protecting our natural resources and cultural areas.
And I thought, Robert, you said that it's going to be either green or red on the beaches. Is
Initially.
there initially? Oh, okay. So the yellow might be a factor later on type of
Yep.
thing
Yeah, so
as
that
things evolve.
the drone pass system really is that solution to those yellow zones because we recognize that a majority of those yellow zones were identified based off of seasonality, based off nesting season, based off park busyness in a given summertime or a place that becomes really busy in the wintertime. So that yellow zone really is the drone pass system is the answer to that. So Kenji, I see your hand up. Do you want to jump in?
Yeah. So, quick thing for folks. I want to put everything into context as well. And like you said, Robert, this is version one, right? And I think one of the interesting things that are coming out, at least on the federal level and among many other states, counter UAS, which includes elements of drone detection, is becoming a real big thing. Sorry, I'm driving. And the beauty of it is that once we start getting coverage of drone detection throughout the state, including some that covers some of the state parks. And Joe, you'll appreciate this too, is you really start to find out not only from anecdotal evidence, but real data that's obtained about where these drones are flying and whether they're flying in proximity to these sensitive areas. Then you can really start fine tuning a lot of the things that we're doing right now. So you can expect more data and really precise data on what operations are happening. And that's going to be coming up, I'd say, within the next 5 to 7 years. So just think about that in context of our discussions, because I think the value of the data and the accuracy of the data is gonna be very, very, very good compared to just people just saying, "Hey, I saw a drone" or whatever. This will actually, you can provide values, distances, and such.
Perfect. Thank you, Kenji. I did want to clarify one part on the ocean shore. Commercial activity on the ocean shore does require a permit. And so if you're doing commercial activity on state park property within the ocean shore area, it does require a permit. So just a quick clarification point there. So not seeing any other hands up, I'm going to jump back to our slideshow here. Can you guys see that? Is it sharing?
Not yet.
Of course. Share. There we go.
Now we're good.
Perfect. All righty. So made it through our draft rule. Thank you guys for bearing with me on that. And I've taken a lot of notes. So though we weren't making adjustments at that given time, I did take notes. It's also recorded. And so we'll work together as an agency and kind of review all of that and see what parts we want to change or need to change before we open public comment. The next thing I want to jump into, as part of our RAC, we do want to consider the economic and fiscal impact our rules may have on different parts of Oregon. So I'm going to kind of go one of these at a time, and if anyone has any comments or concerns or considerations regarding this, please feel free to raise your hand, let me know, and I'll give you a chance to talk. So, looking at these draft rules, what fiscal or economic impacts do you anticipate on small business? We'll just start with that. No hands. I'll move on with local governments. Oh, Kenji, go ahead.
Yep. So one of the interesting pieces is, for example, if with the and it happens right now with special use permits, it's the delay in getting that permit. Oftentimes with major productions and such, you're getting last minute requests from production companies, which can be within like 5 or 7 days of the actual filming. So, say for example, Rivian, we filmed at a state park. It's like if the process isn't able to push through these things on a timely basis, you're talking economic impacts of probably in the order of magnitude of $15,000 per event, and thinking maybe for that's with a single operator, potentially thinking of the number of operations that regularly happen on the ocean shores, maybe $200 to $300 of direct impact costs. So that would be a consideration. Recreational side, not as much, but that's what I just spoke about is what's going to impact the small businesses. So, but in terms of compliance with it, very negligible. So it's just the matter of the potential impact of delay in special use permits.
Perfect, thank you. So local governments and or the public, if anyone has any anticipated impacts, fiscal or economic. Go ahead, Michael.
I guess going off of Kenji's comment, do you know how long it might take to turn around a request for drone authorization? Just kind of, I know this is all very early, but I mean, are you looking at doing like a person or like an auto database type thing, or each person's going to have to do each request?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it really depends in a lot of time. In a lot of situations, our park managers are very busy on the ground, and so our rule currently states that those permits will need to be filed well in advance, and so we're looking at the amount of days that might be. I think right now, Katie, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's 30 days in advance technically for our special use permits. That's not to say that that's always what happens. I know there's park managers out there who get a permit request on a Friday at 5 o'clock for a Sunday event, and they stay after and they try to make it happen because they want to help serve the public the best they can. So that's something we're looking at as what is reasonable, what's in a reasonable amount of time to have for permits. And I've had people make suggestions externally, just saying like, well, just require a fee. If it's within a week, the fee is slightly higher than if you submit the permit 30 days in advance. And so providing options for that so our park managers on the ground, especially with special use permits, aren't getting inundated. We're also looking at new technology to be able to help us process these permits better, whether that's an online form that someone can fill out and then it automatically sends the email to the correct people for approval process. All of that is part of the conversation as we get into our special use permit and commercial use permit conversations going forward, trying to make sure it's going to work for not only the public to be able to use, but also not inundate our already busy park staff with hundreds of thousands of permits to look at on any given day. Kenji, go ahead.
Sorry about that. So the other component is the agency approvals. The way that I'm thinking about that is, especially during the winter when weather's so variable, getting the ability to fly in certain areas that might not necessarily be in a takeoff or landing area. That if that takes time and we have more or less an emergency, that or even we need to do some operations there, and because of the weather circumstances, we have to delay flights to get a permit or whatever. You're talking about potential staff lost time. Just anticipate $50 per hour, 4 hours total. So $200 per operation. It doesn't happen very often, but just put that in a figure. I don't know how to quantify that in terms of the actual number of days, but that I think would be an economic consideration if impacted other agencies.
Perfect. Thank you. So I'll jump into that last question there. What, if any, changes could be made to reduce the compliance cost while still maintaining the intent of the rule? Michael, I see your hand is still up.
Yeah, I don't know if it might be, I mean, 30-day turnaround for a permit is going to be very challenging for most drone operators. I know the FAA, when it first started out, before they got the LAANC authorization, kind of auto authorization through the app, that reduced, I mean, that made everything so much easier. Like drone pilots would apply for the authorization, be auto approved, and it just kind of all worked. If you have a 30-day to 90-day turnaround on some of this stuff, people probably just aren't going to use it. They probably just aren't going to worry about it. And especially if you're having people traveling through from out of state or other areas, they probably don't know a lot of what these rules are. And if they're unable to kind of scan a QR code, do it in the moment, be able to have that process fairly easy to navigate, they're probably just going to skip it, I would say, is going to be the more likely outcome. And for some of these areas too, if you're in the South Oregon coast where it's really remote, I could see most of these Oregon shores not having cell service to even look up what these rules might be and be able to look up maps and things like that. So it's, I don't know, there's challenges with tech for sure. And just being able to have people wanting to comply with these new regulations, or even being able to look up what these new regulations are, having it be as easily accessible as possible, and having auto processing done so it's not a huge burden for the Oregon State Park staff, I think would be huge, just to kind of help roll this all out seamlessly and get people on board from the start.
Yeah. I think really to kind of clarify that, I think the main idea around having the permit process is there's a ton of considerations that we have to take into account for approving any permit that's going to be outside of those operation areas that we identify as green. And so that our intent here really is to give a lot of good options, or at least some good options, to people wanting to fly in a given area. And so that would be what we're pointing people to in those green areas. If they're trying to fly kind of last minute, they're just passing through and they want to be able to fly their drone and get some cool pictures. But whenever we're looking at our cultural sites, our historic sites, any environmental concerns, natural resource concerns, there's a lot of touch points there of a lot of different staff members that have to look at that. And so having an auto approval likely wouldn't work in a permit process. And the permit process, the 30-day permit process, really is around more commercial use and big commercial use activities. How that shakes out whenever we get to that commercial use permit process, I can't say for sure. I don't know what that looks like in the long run, but really trying to lean into adaptive management and that drone pass system and those green areas to provide people good options, whether they're on the ocean shore or at Lake Oahe in Far East Oregon, just trying to find good spots to allow flight, but also recognizing that we can't allow flight everywhere because there's a lot of considerations that we have to take into account for our mission. So,
could I follow up with one more thing with that?
Yeah.
If there is a mandatory permit process for commercial use, it might be helpful to have like a date range that you could operate within. Because if it's, especially weather considerations, if it's out on the coast, you're not going to have a date that you're going to be like, oh, we're going to plan for Wednesday or something, because there's a wide range of factors, especially around weather. And so having that be an option to have a permit range would be good. But
Yeah, and
yeah,
just for clarity, that is part of the plan, is to allow, especially in that commercial use permit, to allow for date ranges given specific activity. So just as an example, we might have someone who's a fishing guide who wants to operate out of one of our state parks, and having there be an extended period that their permit is good for is going to be less staff time on us and more advantageous for that commercial use. And so that is a consideration depending on the type of use that we'll consider. Kenji?
Yep, and I'm going to echo that. If you got a system that's easy, convenient, and cheap, it's going to be super helpful to implementation. If you think of like Beat Beat Salem for parking, or Parking Kitty up in Portland, right? You do it on your phone. It's like seamless, and you get it done with. Another piece is like which just on Michael, was with the Lance authorization. The way it works is in certain areas you can get auto approval up to certain heights within controlled airspace. So that could be potentially your green areas. And then when you want to operate outside the boundaries of what's given, what happens then is you can put in an application through that app that can get your approval prior coordination. And that might be a way to do that. And then for these more complicated pieces, it might make it worth it to actually charge a little bit more as a cost recovery, because you said it does take staff time. And it is potential, for example, for commercial operations, for productions, it's cost of doing business. It's not out of the realm of just say, hey, you pass the cost on the production for like $100 or $150. Say, hey, we need to file a permit with the state. That's normal, completely normal. So don't uh, try to argue yourself out of that. So just think of that when you're going through these thought processes.
Perfect. Thanks, Kenji. I'm gonna jump forward here. I know we're getting close to the end of our time, so I just want to go over our timeline here. So again, we're in that outreach phase right now. Our public comment period, we're expecting to run from January to February. The proposed rules will be open for public comment, so any of you are also welcome to provide public comment. Comments will be posted weekly, and a public hearing will take place after the public comments open as well. The agency will review those in between February and April. Staff will analyze the comments. I will analyze the comments, and revise as needed. We'll take all of that into consideration, as well as anything that anyone shared here today. And then DOJ will review our final draft, make sure everything is up to par, and then we'll present to the commission for a decision either in April or June. Again, we'd rather shoot for that April timeline as to not roll out implementation right in the middle of summer. And if it is in the June, that implementation will likely land after summer. So commission may adopt, modify, or delay the rules. And then final rule will be filed with the Secretary of State and implemented. Questions. We have 5 minutes left, so if there's anything that you felt like we didn't touch on, or any additional concerns or considerations that you'd like to present here, feel free to raise your hand. Kenji, I saw you still had your hand up. No, perfect.
No, that was just me forgetting to put my hand out.
No worries. Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Robert. Yeah, one kind of overarching comment, getting back to the rules, is I know there's a big emphasis for this process to be an adaptive management process. And I think that it would be good maybe to include that, and I assume that you'd be using a precautionary approach as you make decisions. So maybe including that kind of language about, um, using that kind of approach in your adaptive management process.
Okay. Anyone else? Alrighty. Not seeing any hands. Thank you again, all of you, for your time and input and considerations and review of these draft rules. I know it's a very big process, especially considering that we have 250 plus parks in our state park system and the entire ocean shore that we're considering these rules around. So it's not taken lightly, and we'll continue again as we move forward. This isn't going to be a one-step process that we write the rules and then it sits on the shelf somewhere. It's going to be a continued adaptive management. We're going to have good conversations with all of our interested parties and partner agencies and anyone that we work with in and around and on this to make sure as we're moving forward, it's working for not only the drone user, but also for the protection of our resources and our public spaces in Oregon. So again, thank you all for your time. And if you have any concerns or questions after this, please feel free to reach out. I'm available. You got my email. But other than that, look forward to seeing any comments from you guys as the public comment period opens.
Thanks, Robert.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Robert.
Great holiday.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.